Welcome to another episode of the Feature Podcast. And as you can tell, today I don't have to wear these crazy headphones. We got mic'd up here, and we have Brandon, our co-host, as well as Alex, my business partner from Dangerfield. And today we're going to talk about kind of Dangerfield, how it started, what we're planning to do, and also a bit about the process of buying into an existing company and kind of the work, how the whole workflow works out in a partnership that is owned by two people. So, Alex, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and Brandon will lead the conversation.
Brandon's going to be the MC.
Nice. I got you. I got to keep space between you boys. That's the idea.
I don't know. You're the ones in matching hoodies.
That's true. Lead us off, Alex. Who are you?
Who am I? My name's Alex, and I'm the one who founded Dangerfield. Probably about the time I moved in the house across the street.
Yeah.
Which I don't live in anymore. So it's funny that we've made it all the way back here.
Did you guys know each other before?
Yeah, a little bit through Trevor. I also drove you home from university a few times because even though UVic's like 900 meters away, I still drove to school every day, and he would cross the road and be like, yo, give me a ride.
I completely forgot about that now.
Yeah, well, that's nice of you.
Yeah, that was nice of you. It was a lot better in your Beamer than it was taking the bus.
Cool. So you're you got in the Beamer instead of the bus. You how did Dangerfield come to be?
You were probably, I think I knew you kind of around that time. I was just making jackets for myself.
Yeah, those the long overcoat jackets.
The first one was like the bombers though. I feel like I might have met you like outside Four Horsemen. Where I was wearing one of the first ones. It was like a Four Horsemen.
It was Four Horsemen.
Four Horsemen event. We were outside that. I think it was the first time we met, and you were just getting into Instagram. Getting into
I was just trying to get some free clothes.
Well, yeah,
it worked.
Yeah, it definitely worked. Yeah.
He's wearing one right now. Years later, he still gets the first editions. So that was like back in 2011. So clothing was like the big focus, the bombers, the overcoats, and we still do a lot of those today, but it's definitely evolved over the years. What's been your inspiration behind like the design and the philosophy of the brand, and over the past 9 years, how has it kind of progressed within that?
Well, we started making a lot of those bombers. I mean, trying to bridge a gap kind of between like menswear and, I don't know if you want to call it streetwear, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it was definitely back then. I'm sure you guys remember there was kind of a lot missing in between those two realms. So the goal was to try and make some of those pieces of like, maybe not luxury brand, but stuff kind of with that design, that tailoring, but at a bit of a lower price point. So, you're getting something on the level of like a luxury brand that might be a few $1,000s, but it's kind of in the $500-$600 range.
Similar material, made in BC, in Canada.
And we were still making everything in Canada, which was back then like our main selling point. So trying to get into all these new shops, all these retailers, that was definitely a key selling point.
Yeah, sure. I found like you really blended contemporary well. And when we first met, that first shoot, and I'd love to put some pictures right here. Whereabouts on the screen are we doing pictures?
Right, we're going to cover me with that.
All right. So right here, we'll throw the pictures.
Brandon in his bleached hair in the garage.
This was actually before that. We did our first shoot where Alex was like, "Hey, I got Linus taking some photos."
Yeah.
I think we had a girl there as well, Taylor.
Yeah.
But that was when like Matt and I were just getting started, and you had the overcoats. You kind of had the design together. You know what you wanted to do as far as like the vision for the brand, and then eventually it got to the garage, which was right across from Justin's house.
Yeah, for sure. So for a while, it was kind of like a project that eventually evolved into retailers and everything, and obviously the online side, Instagram, and being known as like the local brand in Victoria that does menswear. And sometime last year, I think I just like hit you up out of nowhere, right? I mean,
well, yeah, I mean, we'd known each other since we'd lived here, so I think we on and off we kind of talk, and you check in on Dangerfield and I check in on YouTube, and when we finally met up in person, you kind of brought up the idea of coming on board and seeing what you could bring to the table. And yeah, I mean, at the time, and still, I definitely thought and think it was a good idea, because he brought a lot of over the however many years I've been running it, there's been a handful of people who've wanted to either partner with me or
we still get DMs right now about either for free stuff or to buy part of the brand.
Yeah, not just free stuff, but like people who wanted to partner in the brand, and no one's ever really brought something new to the table. And it's not necessarily just your current audience, but it's it's a lot of business and marketing savvy that I haven't really perfected or anything close to yet. So yeah, for me it was kind of a perfect partnership to have someone who's, especially in that online realm, who knows a lot about putting a product forward on that platform.
Yeah, it was definitely it's been a learning experience, and like it's my first tangible good industry. And in the past we've been doing marketing of trying to sell or discussing products that are of the space of technology and sometimes lifestyle, and trying to get consumers, advise consumers on it, and hopefully end up purchasing it. So it was definitely an area that I've always wanted to try out. I mean, I like clothing, I like retail. You could argue that I don't exactly dress towards the premium side of the brand, but obviously the essentials line has been something that we've tried to bring out. High quality hoodies that are embroidered, and also the leather goods, the packaging experience, and just trying to kind of give a new audience to a company, as well as encouraging the millennial generation and even a little bit older to appreciate premium fashion that is made in BC, and high quality goods that can be used on an everyday basis or worn.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, it's still trying to maintain the same ethos that we started with, but it's branching out into products that still maintain that level of integrity, but it's just a different space, right? Like it's all the same vision behind whatever product we're putting forward, but it's not necessarily one type or one specific demographic. It's just that type of product, and whoever buys it. So,
well, you guys both work in creative fields of your own niche. How have you found ways to collaborate on the brand?
I think like both of us have been singularly operating our companies for the majority of the time that it's existed. In my case, it was like having to do every single thing. And in your case, it was having to manage the business side, the retailers, designs, and distributors. And I think at some point it feels like you're not able to narrow down or focus on an area that you feel like only you could do. And you kind of have to build that partnership or bring in staff members that are able to complement a different area. I think that was the biggest thing, where Alex liked doing the designs and everything. I like doing the business side, even though I have to film all these YouTube videos, but I've always liked doing the business side, the visuals, and putting that together. So in that case, we've always had like discussions of like creative direction. There's definitely been some hiccups here and there about what looks that we enjoy, but I think that's all part of it. And also like involving into the business, how to grow it towards the future, the marketing strategies, taking a look at the data and the whole social media world. What was like the biggest change that you experienced from working in a partnership and kind of switching it over from having to manage every single thing for the first 8 years?
I mean, to be honest, it really wasn't that big of a change, which I think is a testament to Justin. I think we're both pretty opinionated people, considering
a little bit stubborn.
Yeah.
Used to doing things their own ways.
But like, considering that's our type of personality, and we still manage to get along, and I would say on a majority of things we agree, especially in terms of the creative side. I think it kind of goes to show that Justin was the right choice for someone to partner with, considering how many months has it been? Close to
It's been about 8 months. No major fights yet. A couple hiccups here and there, which is normal. But I think we're both at the age where like we're not kids anymore. We can have a reasonable discussion and break down the logics of the business side and kind of reason with things. So I think that's been where we've kind of
and oftentimes I find like once I've if there is anything I might not agree with, once I've thought about it, overnight. It sometimes is hard to admit when you're wrong. Not necessarily that you're always right, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you kind of have to, not just when you're working in a partnership, when you're running any kind of business, like a compromise is definitely a skill you need to learn quickly.
It's like a mix between intuition and data, like where you take a look at the data that comes out of the clicks, the demographic that you're working with, the sales conversions, and also mixing it with what you believe in and going the direction. I think that's the cool part about business. There's a lot of variables depending on what, like even between products and demographics or types of videos, we're seeing different types of information. And even though our sales are not anything crazy yet, I feel like the feedback of the company has been pretty good, and obviously the focus of the last 8 months, even though it did take a little bit longer than we may have expected, with like the delays and stuff, the packaging and looking at like different samples and ensuring that we have the best possible product, and now the process of selling it. I think something like the packaging and the customer experience is something that we've been able to collaborate on and improve within the products that we were already selling and feel like can provide a lot of value.
Yeah, like this is a good example of something that Justin brought forward where,
we did have a bit of a...
I don't know if we should say exactly how much we spent on packaging, and, for someone who never really...
Just describe it for someone who's listening on audio.
Describe this.
Textured boxes that look like an Oreo layered finish and has embossing and...
No. Let me describe it.
Here we go.
Are we allowed to cuss on this podcast?
Yes.
It's the nicest fucking box you'll ever buy.
What would you compare it to? Apple?
Apple's got its own thing going on, but in terms of like
designer brands, I don't really want to target any specific brand, but I think it does go within.
In terms
the
of designer brands, that is a lot nicer than anything you'll.
We almost went for corrugated though. But I think what we noticed is that in North America, these boxes are so expensive, and that if you take a look at the other options out there and you're really able to customize it, the sizing, the samples, like there are so many things you're able to customize, and the quality and the craft ends up way better than what we were originally going to go with that could have costed more money. The biggest issue is minimum quantities and the number of boxes that we have at the moment in different sizes. But I think the packaging, coming from the tech industry and in the product industry, I mean, when I first started YouTube, it was all about unboxing stuff and experiencing tech as a consumer. And you see Unbox Therapy's done so well. And before, his channel was like just opening stuff and bringing the experience to people who are either thinking of buying the product or haven't bought it yet. And I think something like this, the way you deliver the product is extremely important. Obviously, the customer service and everything goes along with that. But I think the visual experience does really elevate it. I think that's why we've been very picky about that, and it's taken a little bit longer than we would have liked. But yeah, the end result was good, and I definitely encourage anybody who's listening to the podcast to check out what these boxes look like. Well,
Justin, when you joined Dangerfield, what were some immediate things that stood out right away that from your experience in media was important that you needed to address with Dangerfield?
That was probably the first thing. One of them
was the packaging.
No, I think the reason why I was interested is because I've always wanted to be in the fashion field, and I also didn't want it to be associated with my brand name. I wanted it to be its own thing. I feel like you're kind of capping the potential of it unless you're massive on YouTube. I think in the tech industry, I've been asked to do merchandise in the past, and it just wasn't something I considered.
Yeah, and I think you had mentioned like the handful of YouTubers that have their own like quote brand.
I mean, they're doing well, but in this case, it was a scenario of wanting to have something that is separate from it.
Yeah, I mean, selling merch and having your own brand are two very different things, and I think
for sure
there's a wild difference between a YouTuber who's just slapping their name. Not to offend anyone, but like if you're just going to slap your name on some Gildan hoodies, that's fine. But it's not anything. It's not anything like what you and I are doing, or you specifically as a YouTuber.
Yeah, it was definitely a risk. A lot of times, putting a name on the brand is the easiest thing to do. I think what really stood out to me is it was my first company that I've bought into. It has to have the backbone. It has to have the style. It has to have the kind of general backbone. Otherwise, it would just make sense to start my own brand. But it had the backbone. It had its suppliers. The product was good. It was made in BC. But when you buy into a company, there's a few ways to do it. You can either be a a silent investor, an angel investor. You contribute funds and everything, and it's just in order to increase the number of resources. Or you could be an active investor where you purchase in half the company, and we end up splitting the workload and collaborating with that. And I feel like that was what I do like to be involved in a lot of things. It does take a lot of time, and obviously YouTube's already pretty busy, but it's a project that allows you to, distance from the whole like doing the same thing every single day and contribute more creatively. In a lot of ways, it could be more effective than when I'm doing something in the space that I've already been very familiar in. A lot of times you're stuck with the same way of thinking. But with this, I was able to come in and give my ideas from like an outsider's perspective, like a lot of times very blunt ideas and opinions towards it. And yeah, I think the backbone was there. I like the fact that it had the high-end field. I didn't want to just make like Gildan hoodies, but at the same time, I wanted to expand to like a lifestyle line of products that were not just clothing, but more accessible, high-quality, daily wear kind of things. And these are the hoodies that we're wearing right now. The cotton, the cut, everything is to spec. And it's being able to do, I think we discussed a lot about the different waves of design that we wanted to do, where we have the main lineup on the fall, winter, and the spring, summer. It's a little bit more premium, lower volumes, higher price point, handmade in BC to order or individually. And the lifestyle line where we have different drops, different designs of logos and collections, that maybe even collaborations down the road that people can just enjoy and wear on an everyday basis. So I think that was what I wanted to do with the YouTube audience. I think the kind of lifestyle mix with a clothing brand that is anchored by a premium lineup of overcoats and bombers was just really cool to me. And I've seen the progression of the company over the years, the photo shoots and everything. And yeah, it would have, going into the fashion industry on my own would have been very time consuming and probably wouldn't have worked out, just because you can't just go into it and not knowing anything about like designs and how this retailer to creator.
Well, what have you learned from Alex from joining the business that you didn't know about fashion before, or owning a clothing company?
That in the tangible goods industry, there's just a lot of things going on, and a lot of times it's very expensive. You have to put a lot of upfront costs. Coming from marketing, there are no upfront costs aside from like equipment. You just you buy your camera, you sell a slot, and you record the video. Whereas in this case, there's a lot of pre-planning. There's communications with the distributors, and a lot of times there's like variables of whether or not they're going to order, or whether we're ordering too many of something, and having to put money forward to predict our inventory status is definitely tough, and there's risk to it that I wasn't used to before. So that's definitely cool. That was an area that I figured out right away. Was evident, and even now we're trying to figure out what the best way to strategize each lineup is, not over creating and how to pick what's in season and what's in style right now. But yeah, the premium line is something that Alex is focused a lot on, and in my case, it's like the hoodies and essential stuff for the daily wear. But
well, for someone listening to this, it's more into like the business marketing side of it. Like, how do you stop yourself from going almost like over creating and over perfecting a product?
Yeah, I think I don't
know if you can really over perfect a product. I mean, the last thing you want to do is put out a product before it's perfected. Yeah, which is definitely something I learned.
Meeting schedules is also something that I learned.
Yeah,
how like
I mean the logistics behind an idea to a finished product to selling that product is just exponentially more when it's a tangible good.
If you're on time, then you're late, kind of thing. Yeah. Like next thing you know, there's one delay here.
You just need to be working so far ahead.
Yeah.
And if one thing goes wrong, it's just a snowball effect. Right? Yeah. And
boxes aren't here. We're not ready to send this out, kind of thing. And it's kind of a shame not to send it with the boxes. Corona was a factor in that.
Yeah. I mean, and the whole pandemic kind of threw a spanner in the works.
Surprisingly, it bounced back. It bounced back pretty quick from the production, but. Obviously the retail strategy is something that has been a bit sidelined, but I think we were talking about how like Ronnie and how many collabs he's done. Like every other week he's got a new collab with a restaurant, a Coca-Cola and all that, and how that was likely planned out a long time in advance and it's ready to go. Because even us, we're trying to do the spring summer. Once the sample's here and there's like a little bit of a delay of 1 to 2 weeks, next thing you're behind like 3 to 4 weeks on the season. And by the time the inventory comes, the stores are hit hard by COVID. It's like trying to navigate a cash flow industry. It's like the restaurants too. They rely heavily on cash flow. Whereas in our case, we've at least had a little bit of capital to work with.
I mean, the nice thing about Ronnie and doing Kith is that like he's kind of carved this own space for himself where it's like he doesn't really rely on any kind of calendar. Yeah, he's got to work with all these logistics, but you know, he has kind of a unique brand that he does all these collabs that don't necessarily have to be on a certain schedule. So I mean, it'd be nice to kind of
collaborations are always really fun. I mean, we're not going to be working with Coca-Cola or anything anytime soon, but yeah, I think we've looked at a lot of brands as like inspiration as to how they do things and the style behind it, and figuring out a direction and sticking to it is always the toughest thing. I usually like to jump around on a lot of ideas and things, but yeah.
Do you give yourselves timelines for certain, like if we don't have an idea by X, then we move on? Or do you have any sort of timeline in what you guys are doing now? Yeah,
we have a kind of a rough one now. I mean, a lot of things have been thrown off schedule because of Corona. I mean, in terms of all the wholesalers that are not sure if they're going to open up again after this, or that's taken.
Some of them had robberies as well, where they lost some money from that before, and on top of that, there's COVID, and in that case, they want you to like compromise and discuss like new rates and stuff. But as a business where a lot of times our margins are not very high yet at the volumes.
How would wholesalers affect someone generally in the clothing business?
Well, I mean, up until I don't know how many years ago when like online sales started to take off, like retailers, they ran the market. So, everything was about, the 2 trade shows a year where you have spring, summer and fall, winter.
Which isn't happening for a long time.
Yeah, and I mean, so now it's tough because there's a lot of brands and retailers who, don't know what's going to happen after this, if they have to pivot into something else. Should we be focusing all of our attention on online and, have a backup? Like it's kind of hard, especially for retailers that have, you've supported them and they've supported you for the last 8 years, whatever. It's kind of hard to prioritize your needs first. So we're definitely in kind of a difficult position right now where it's hard to say no to some of them.
Yeah.
In terms of like what they need for delivery. But
if you were to focus all of your attention online, let's say the wholesalers in store trying something on was extinguished and it was all online sales, how would you go all in online?
I mean, it's more just a question of timing, I guess, because when you're working with the retail calendar, you're selling things for September, October. You're selling those in January, February, which means you need to be working on those.
You have to put the money forward to put together the inventory, and
you're basically working over 12 months before. So
as soon as one season launches, the next one has to be ready to go.
So when you're basically getting rid of that completely, which I don't think we're going to do, but when you're getting rid of that, it takes a whole lot of stress, off these timelines, and it opens up a lot of creativity in terms of, what you're going to make this coming month or this next 6 months, as opposed to basically a year and a half. If you're coming up with ideas, you need to have those ready, before the trade show, which means you need to be working on those, coming up with those ideas a year and a half before.
Wow.
And like, when you're not a massive brand and you don't have a massive budget and you don't have a massive cash flow, which, we all know cash is king. It's hard to keep up with a lot of things. So that's why retail is difficult. But at the same time, having retailers like that is how Dangerfield began, how it's grown to what it is now. I mean, so it's kind of hard to completely discount them.
Yeah.
Especially
we're so early into like the push towards the online strategy. It's hard to guarantee the return of going fully online. So I think any cash flow that is guaranteed, which in most cases in the past has been the retailers, is still very good to have. And we've discussed like obviously different options, potentially expanding into retail in the future ourselves. What would be your, I mean, we've discussed this, but what would be your ideal kind of retail setup environment. All of my opinions are related to design and like the layout or the furniture and stuff. But what would be like your ideal setup for a retail expansion?
Well, yeah, we were talking about this right before we came on. I mean, like, I think simpler is better. But I think there's a handful of ways you can kind of differentiate your retail experience to other people's. But a lot of the ideas you were bringing forward, it's the same kind of ideas as mine. I mean, the customization, the personalization of things, I think is big, because especially where we are, there's the retail industry is small. To say the least.
It relies heavily on traffic from tourists. Cruises are nearby, but the good thing is that there are only a few main streets, so if people were looking to shop, they don't really have much else to go if you're in the right area. But at the same time, it does look like a lot of these companies with the COVID effects are not able to continue business. But yeah, the retail to online thing is always a big debate. We still want to keep stores, but once you have your own shop, it's sort of like, do you really want to still sell it at a margin to the?
Yeah, I mean, I think in an ideal scenario, we'd have all of them going for us. We'd have online, we'd have retail, and we'd have
but with only two people, that can be difficult.
Our flagship store, yeah, exactly, and it's just, again, it's another thing into the whole logistics, like that just seems to compound all these complications. But yeah, I think it can be done, and there's tons of other brands that well, maybe not tons, but I think there are some that are able to do all three well.
Yeah.
But
they do seem to gravitate. At the end of the day, there's always one area that is showing things that, like, retail is, some people say retail is dead nowadays, but I feel like for like local brands, there still can be benefits. Oxford, for example, has done very well as a local one. But yeah, it's all about like experimenting and seeing which direction we want to shift towards. Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and all that, which, like, some products are going to sell much better in retail. For example, our higher end goods, the overcoats and things that people can physically try on. If they're spending that amount of money, I feel like that would benefit a lot from retail. Whereas like a leather good or a hoodie, once you see the photo and you see somebody wearing it, you're like, oh, that looks nice. The materials look like it's good. It's been listed. Then that will sell better online. And I think because we want to make it clear that we are still a premium clothing brand made in BC on our premium line of products, that a retail space could make sense. It's just a matter of, the time commitment and all the things that go into setting up another stream for that. Talking more about like the business side of things, you started out as a sole proprietor working out of another company, Dangerfield. Well, Dangerfield was operating out of another company. I incorporated in 2018. What was so like when it came to buying in, we formed a new company, incorporated that. What was like the most surprising part of the process of incorporating a company for the first time, aside from the cost?
I mean, I was going to say the cost.
Yeah, it's a lot of paperwork, couple thousand, and it's just one meeting at the end. They do all the other stuff for you. But in Canada, at least, we had to submit, I think, 3 different names to get approved for the incorporation. And
for the name, I don't know if
I think we did have to submit our top 3 choices to see if it was available.
Yeah, I mean, they just want options. I mean, I think you can look up what's available, but you need to have...
that's on the back end kind of thing.
Yeah, you need to have something that kind of describes what you're producing, or, some kind of...
And that was either done usually through a lawyer or an accountant, but in this case, I think we went through an accountant, right?
No, a lawyer did the corporation.
Yeah, because my holdings was done through an accountant, but my other company was done through a lawyer, I think.
Yeah, there was still a lot of accounting fees, because we basically had to do a stub year end, which means you, instead of doing a full accounting year end, you just do up until the date of incorporation, and then you end that year for that company then, and then a new one starts, and your financial year end from here on out is going to be at that date.
Yeah. Because in this space, you do have to document all the inventory and the cash flow and everything on spreadsheets, whereas that was something that I was not very good at, but good thing everything was all sorted. Accounting was able to figure that out. And then from there, we go to the lawyer's office and sign sign some of the papers of the partnership. And then the step after that is to set up your bank accounts. Once you have your official business number and incorporation number and all that stuff, the bank was like pretty quick, couple hours, and then the credit card process gets applied. But I think, I wanted to talk more about in another episode about incorporation and what that benefits with the company. In this case, it makes sense because it was a partnership. But for I know there's a lot of freelancers in creative field who are not yet incorporated. And I feel like they're missing out on a lot of benefits of that. But just for anyone who's looking to buy into a partnership, that was kind of the process of it. You either purchase an existing one, or you could start a brand new one. And in this case, we started a brand new one, 50-50, and the share price was set at its minimum. And I think we both had to write like a $10 check. We had to, there was no, they were just like, you have to write a $10 check and have a record of that to be purchasing half the shares. So that was like the process of that side. Another good question.
Well, I'm just curious about what you guys' process is like from the idea being alchemized to the finished, well, at least like not the finished product, but the jacket, let's say your first jacket that you've gone from idea to product. What's that amount of time like, and what's involved with it?
Time-wise, I mean, it depends on what type of piece you're making, but like for the thing I started with like the varsity jackets, I mean, you take your idea to a pattern maker. For those who don't know, a pattern is basically if you were to take a finished piece, cut it all up and light out flat, all those pieces make up a pattern. So a pattern maker specializes in, how things fit, and they know how to draw out all these pieces and cut them to perfection. And you go to a pattern maker with your idea, and you take that idea to, usually a seamstress who will just do a one-off.
And real quick, while you're going through it, I just want to kind of break it down a little bit more. How do you find a good pattern maker? Like what makes the right one for your brand?
What percentage of stuff never ends up for sale? Because I know we have a lot of one-off samples, which look pretty good, but there's always something that kept us from.
It's definitely a lot.
Right.
I mean, to put it into perspective, the overcoat, we've probably gone through 8 to 10 different iterations of how that's fit, and every time
is that on the pattern maker or is that on your design?
Both, because every time you go through a new iteration, you're paying for a new pattern, you're paying for a new sample, and you're paying for fabric for all of that, you're paying for time, it all adds up, and then times that by however many times it takes to get it right. What was the first question there?
It was just about like what makes a good pattern maker, like one to stick with.
So if you're lucky, you can find a factory that has, a pattern maker in-house. More often than not, if they don't have that, they'll have a pattern maker that they recommend. One of those two options is the best, because if you, get them from two separate parties or however many, let me put it this way, if you get a pattern and you were to send it to 10 different factories, you would get 10 different results. So having someone in-house who can do that, or someone that they usually work with, they know all the intricacies of how each piece goes together. So yeah, it's definitely hard finding the right people, especially in BC. I mean, there's not that many options.
And some are better at making one product than another.
Yeah, so a lot of them will specialize, and I think that's why you see a lot of manufacturing in like New York and LA, because there's just this insanely dense population of all these really talented factories.
Yeah.
Do you see value in going down to the States for some of your work, or do you want to keep everything in Canada?
Until the Canadian dollar is worth more than monopoly money, then
So for phase 2, it was pattern maker, and then what was the next one? After they got the design and everything, you're happy with the way it fits.
Usually you want to take it to either a seamstress who, again, the factory might be able to do your sample, your one-off, but usually it's a seamstress you'll have to take to, and they'll do, basically your final sample. So you kind of have to go through that process a few times till it's done correctly and everything you like about the piece. And then that's when you take the final pattern and the sample. That's when you take it to the factory, and they'll do a run of them. what they'll do is they'll make a marker, which is basically like a final pattern. And that is basically a computer-generated program of the pattern that's printed out on the same width as what the fabric comes in. And the computer generates the most economical way to put all the pieces of fabric within that, yardage of fabric.
Yep.
So once you have that done, then you can start to order fabric, and the rest of it's pretty much up to the factory.
How long does that normally take?
Well, if we get our orders from shops in February and we place those orders to the factory within the next few weeks of final orders, we'll get things back to us in sort of July, August. So yeah, it's a fair wait.
And sometimes you might order something and there's always going to be something wrong with it. Maybe like something got lost in communication, or the color is different on half of them.
I mean, usually that's one of the benefits of getting things made locally, because there isn't really much lost in communication there, because you're at the factory, you're talking with the pattern maker in person, you're talking with the head of the factory in person. Being able to touch and feel and being right with someone who's going to make the product makes such a huge difference. And I mean, it's not something you're going to get for pieces that require tailoring. It's just not really going to get that by trying to work with someone on the other side of the world.
Even though we have had good relations with working.
I mean,
they're very efficient. Like, these factories are overall pretty communicative and easy to work with.
100%.
There's still a lot of variables. Like, you've got the shipping variables, you have the material variables. In the case of the boxes, they ran out of that stuff in between, but they had something like similar ready to go. With the jackets as well, like sometimes you could have a variable with the fabric or like the tags. This stuff is coming from so many places that you don't have full control over sometimes.
There's so many things going into every single piece. But I mean, it's not to, in no way am I saying that Canadian factories put out, well, in some way, it's not that they necessarily put out a better product than anywhere else in the world. It's just that it's easier to get to that final product that is what you want
at the scale.
For sure. And I mean, it's definitely hard to find the right people to work with, but I'm sure that's the same in every business and every industry.
What were some details that would ensure less mistakes with suppliers?
Well, I think that's kind of one of the things you have to go with your gut. I mean, you can kind of tell if someone's, because when I was trying to find a factory, it's, I was going through just about every single one I could find in BC. And
you can explain things one way to 10 of them, and they all interpret it a little bit differently.
Yeah,
Same with like a graphic designer. You tell them like what you want in the logo.
And,
but
you can look at the final product, and you might have, out of 10 final products, you might have, 6 that you like, and then it comes down to, choosing the one that, you think actually understands where you're coming from and is going to work with you to give you what you want, which they should, considering how much you're paying them. So I mean, it's a whole list of things that goes into choosing the right factory.
So let's say you're somebody starting out right now, starting from scratch. What would be like step one of like getting your vision together of what you want your brand to be?
What you want your brand to be?
Yeah, I mean, like, actually to add some context, like, for example, when you had that epiphany and you're like, I want to start a clothing brand, how did you start with a name? Did you start with the designs? Like, where did you start?
I mean, everyone's process is going to be different, but I mean, I was just drawing out really terrible designs and just, hoodies and t-shirts, that kind of stuff. Like, I was still in university, so I was just doing stuff like that, selling to friends. And it wasn't really until I was doing the jackets that like I realized that it could be something I could possibly do as a living. And it was Outlooks, the shop on in downtown Victoria. They were the first ones to place an order, and they've been one of the best clients since. But yeah, I mean, once you get an order, like I just took one jacket and just showed Dale, the owner of that shop. He kind of gave me a bit of insight into how you can run a business. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the first few steps that I took anyways, but I think everybody's is going to be different.
Yeah, I think a lot of times clothing creators, you have like clothing, you have appreciation for it, but you feel like there's something missing. There's a way you like something from this jacket, you like something from another, and when you put together like the custom spec as something that you believe is perfect but needs to be at an accessible price, that's when you start to come up with ideas.
That's kind of the answer to the question too, which is like how do you go about starting? Is you can go to those pattern makers and the sample makers, and you take something that you like, whether it's a jacket or whatever, and you say, I really like this and this, but I want this length changed, and I want the sleeve to fit like this, and I want the collar to be like this instead of this, and that's how I started, by just taking in a jacket and altering all these things and using the fabrics that I wanted to use and using the lining and all this stuff. So yeah, that's how I went about it. I'm sure there are other ways, but
yeah, that was kind of the same with the hoodies actually. Mm-hmm. Usually like little cuff changes, the hood stitching, and I noticed like most of these hoodies are printed, so embroidery. But yeah, it's with jackets as well. It's like there's a lot of little variables, the way it fits, the zippers that you like on one of them. There's so many fabrics to pick from. I think you showed me, and I might have shut down like 95% of them because we just ordered like all these swatches to take a look at. And it's like such a small swatch. A lot of times it's hard to tell if it will look good in a big one. And when it comes, you're like, oh crap, like that looks terrible. But as a swatch, it looks pretty good. Mm-hmm. Another thing I wanted to kind of touch on for on the business partnership side, you can be totally honest and brutal about this. What's the worst part of having to work with me?
I've been thinking about this because
it's your chance.
I get a lot of questions about what it's like to work with someone else, not specifically just you, but like having run a company for about 8 years, and then having a partner. I think the best way I can describe it is, that scene in The Social Network where Mark Zuckerberg is. Mark Zuckerberg is sitting with his girlfriend at the bar, and he's being a complete idiot, but he has no idea. Oh my god!
Have you seen the scene, Justin?
Yeah, I think it's a while ago. I haven't watched it in many years, but I sort of remember what the movie was.
Like, he is the way he is. Like, he's so intellectual and so business savvy in some areas, but is kind of
socially awkward.
Not necessarily socially awkward, but because he's so adept at like some certain aspects, I think there's an oversight in others. Yeah. And I think but like, I think that kind of personality is required in a good business. Like, you're adept at some things that I'm not, and I'm good at some things that you're not. So I think, to answer the question, what was the question? What's it like to work with Justin?
What's the worst part of working with me?
The worst part?
Like when we got over to fight over the boxes, and also the quality of the changes on some of the products, but after a couple of days, you kind of cooled off on it. And
I don't think we really fought over anything. I mean, there was definitely some disagreement about like, because the vision, I think we've always agreed on, which I think is the main thing. But yeah, I don't think we really fought over boxes or changing a lot of the products. I don't know.
Here's the thing. Just to represent, and it's funny you even say it this way, but to represent the angel's advocate here.
Yeah.
What if someone's going into a partnership right now? Let's say they've been considering with someone for a while. They've got a brand. Like, what are some things that they can best position themselves to get the most out of the partnership?
It's a big question.
Just give me one example, like one from you and one from you.
I think if you're looking what you can get out of the partnership, you might be looking at it wrong.
It's not to get out. It's the way to best position yourself. It's not what you're getting out of it, but the way you provide the most value for the person you're going into partnership with.
How can you show what your value is?
Exactly.
I think it's
those
just
are the initial discussions.
It's just your track record. I think you know your actions are a lot louder than what's just on you say that you've done. Like your resume of work for anybody is going to be much more valuable than whatever certificate you have in maybe you went to the school of graphic design. Well, yeah, that's great, but like, what have you designed?
Yeah,
that's the type of thing. So I think some advice to any creator is just to create, just to have a massive portfolio of work that you want to put forward, whether like that can be in any space too, right? I mean, clothing design is kind of the hardest one because to create is extremely expensive. It's hard to,
in the beginning, a lot of it you're just making it for yourself.
Yeah. So I mean, I think for me it worked because a lot of the things I wanted to make, I would have just been doing anyways.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the same in any creative space. Like you started YouTube just because that's what you were interested in. You would have been doing that kind of thing.
I also just wanted free stuff.
Yeah, that's
same with Alex, Brandon wanting free clothes.
To be honest, it's kind of same with me too. Like I just there was a lot of things I wanted, but I didn't have enough money to go out and buy whatever that piece of clothing was. I was just going to go and make it.
But once you make it, you start to go down the rabbit hole. Your friends are like, "Oh, that's cool. I would buy that," and then it becomes a brand.
I think that's true with just about any creative venture. I mean, anybody who's in that is in it for a reason. If you're in it, if you're just going to go and make clothing because you want to make money, well, that's just the dumbest thing ever. I just used my economics degree and go work in finance. Like, if I was just in it just to make money, you're in the wrong industry.
Yeah, I think my answer to that question would be, especially I would say we both have like strong opinions, and going into Alex's brand, that's his brand. Like it's his own for the past year. So a lot of times it does take some convincing. I think going in as a partner who is new to it, I think the most important thing in the partnership is if you have an opinion, you got to be able to back it up and explain it logically from either a business standpoint or from past experience to give them something to think about. Like I feel you got to explain it. You can't just like, if you want to change something, you can't really just go in and say, I want to change it. You've got to explain.
That's one of the reasons where I think I mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast is that, Justin might have a strong opinion, but it's always going to be backed up by reason. And, when I, sit back and think about a lot of those reasons, he's usually right.
I'm still stubborn though.
Yeah. I mean, stubborn is fine if you can back it up with valid reasoning. And for all of you still in high school, pay attention in English class, because that's probably the best thing you can do right now is to, hone your debate skills. So that's the answer to your question about how to really prepare for a true strong partnership. Because I think a lot of people have this notion that debating and arguing is a bad thing. But I think if you're able to debate and clearly and concisely explain and reason why you want something or why something should be a certain way, it's not an argument. It's just putting facts forward and putting reasoning forward. And I think that's kind of one of the keys to a healthy relationship.
Yeah, you got to put aside your emotions in business and be able to talk business.
Yeah, I mean,
even if it's a little bit blunt sometimes, just get it out there. But yeah, I think you also shouldn't be buying into a company if you're planning to change everything. Like if you want to if you could see the potential in it, but you can't, obviously if it's depending on the scenario or the standing of the brand, it's expansion or you're saving it, that that kind of thing. It's a lot of times a good partnership at a phase of a company where it wants to expand to another area. You have to be happy with where the fundamentals are at. Otherwise, you may as well just start your own thing if you want to change everything about it. But yeah, in terms of like business decisions and design decisions, it's always like looking at the data. What's sold better than others? Where the volumes are at, and in opinionated, you got to just back up the argument effectively on like comparatively and the costs. And yeah, there's a lot of different ways to practice that. And I think being business people and Alex attending university, we've been able to have those logical discussions to reach a conclusion. And there hasn't really been anything that either of us have done or decisions that we made where we still are kind of like, well, that was a little bit dumb, aside from the first round of photos that we sent off for editing, and they weren't exactly the best ones that were taken in the way that the clothing was done. And in a bit of it costed us quite a bit of money, but ever since we've been more on the same page on both the creative side and the business side.
Yeah, I mean, compromise is key.
You guys
it's tough though. Like if somebody stepped into the YouTube company, I would probably be just as like, I don't really want to change stuff, even if there are things that got to be switched up. But I think anytime in business, you do have to be a bit adaptive and let the numbers do the speaking. But at the same time, sometimes ideas take a lot of time to catch on. You have to try what you believe in for a couple years and not give up on it too early. So yeah, it's just all about a balance and trying to come up with a logic to apply.
What is there, just to wrap this thing up, what's something to look forward to out of Dangerfield over the next year here?
Well, I think Alex can speak a lot about the premium side, but on the essential side, I think continuing to create different lineups of hoodies that are high quality, comfortable, and ones that I've been wearing a lot, and hopefully also distribute them out a little bit more, and maybe even a retail shop. We do have to kind of on the back end figure out if that's a feasible decision right now, but that has always been kind of a dream, even though it's very expensive to run, and with like online you can optimize it in certain ways. I feel like having a tangible goods store is kind of the point where the company's at its stage where it could kind of prove that it's lasted and it's made it.
Yeah. Opening up a retail shop is definitely requires a handful of things.
Time, money, consistency, and industry effects, like a whole bunch of variables.
Yeah, gloves and masks.
Sanitizing everything.
It would definitely be a really different landscape opening up a shop when all this is over. I mean, there's definitely gonna be a lot of basics and things like that we want to help push the brand forward in the right direction. In terms of like sort of the higher ticket items, the stuff that requires a whole lot of design. We definitely want to be putting new stuff out there. It's going to be weird seeing what the timeline is with a lot of things reopening and what's happening with the economy.
What's going to stay, what's going to go, the travel industry.
Yeah, I mean, and so spending habits are going to be a whole lot different than they were, 6 months ago.
That's another transition we've had to adjust to, the way we spend money that is within the company, and throwing the money around a little bit.
You've maintained a pretty strong habit of just burning money. There's nothing wrong with that. You got to spend money to make money. But yeah, I mean, I think the goal is to always be putting new stuff out, and a lot of the stuff that we can push in higher quantities, that stuff that we've been working on for the last 8 months, like a lot of the leather goods and the hoodies and things like that. That kind of stuff is going to help us pay for stuff that makes the brand and is sort of the
lower volume, higher cost.
And I think we both know going into that kind of production that it's not a money maker, and it's not a massive
the scalability of it is like the long-term future, because as a local brand, if you're trying to make premium products, it is relatively hard to make money. So we are still trying to navigate that and figure out where the scalability paths are. Obviously, influencer marketing is also a big area we want to focus on. We've sent some stuff out to the Canucks, the Raptors, and I think influencer marketing and using expertise from that area is also going to be some investment and and also Facebook, Instagram ads to push the online sales, higher conversion rates. But Shopify's definitely been interesting. I mean, I started a business on Shopify in grade 8. It didn't go so well, but it's a cool platform, and there's infinite. I mean, Kylie Jenner's store runs on Shopify, so all the data they give you has all been very helpful. And yeah, so I think pushing online, pushing the essentials line, keeping consistent with the premium products and our kind of bespoke area of jackets and the overcoats, as well as hopefully retail expansion and maintaining our relation with the retailers around the country as well, is just a way to. That's sort of the summarized way of saying what the future of the brand is. But we're definitely working on some designs and kind of pushing towards the next chapter of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that summarizes most of it.
Looking forward to it, boys.
Cool.
Yep. So I'm terrible at wrapping things up as usual, but thank you guys so much for tuning in to this one, and we'll talk to you in the next one.
Peace.